Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today you are listening to part 2 of my podcast with Gareth Sapstead, and I really hope you enjoyed the first one. If you did, it will mean the world to me if you just pull out your phone, go into 100% Real with Ruby and give my podcast a 5-star rating. You don't need to worry about typing in a review if you don't want to, but a 5-star rating will mean the world to me because I'm not going to have ads on here. Ads annoy the hell out of me. So it's the best way to get my podcast out there, sharing it to a friend, telling someone else to listen in. And I hope you enjoy part 2 of this. Differently. And if you keep this is where I get really annoyed when people just post a video and say, how does this look? I don't freaking know. How does it feel? What are you focusing on?
How's it feel?
I find it so difficult to critique videos if there is no context to it. I just say, that looks good. Or I try to critique something, but I can't give my best critique if I don't know how you're feeling it, what you're focusing on and how I can help you improve it. Because a video without that context is not really beneficial, because the way that I might do something, for example, I remember my coach saying this to me before. He's like, well, I could tweak this, but you just said that you're feeling it really well, so I'm not going to say anything. That is what a good coach is, not someone who forces you to fit like a textbook thing when you feel it really damn well. And again, this is why program design is an art, and bringing it back to the importance of setting up exercises correctly, because everything is in the setup, and that setup helps your execution. And then also the whole program design art thing, when you pair exercises together, for example, the leg curl with the squat for some people, or the leg curl with the hip thrust for some people. But one thing I forgot to mention as well, sorry, I'm going to throw a lot at you. You can ramble on about this. Barbells being overrated for a lot of people as well.
There's a lot there. No, look, so yeah, we talk about it as an art and a science, right? You know, we've obviously both got a science background. We understand what's going on in the body and what, I don't know, what research says gets the highest muscle activation and what, you know, what tension is and what the mechanisms of muscle hypertrophy and fat loss, whatever. Okay. However, we can write the best program. Okay. We can write the theoretical best program on paper for someone. And what happens if at the end of the week, that person then says to you, I did not feel this working in this certain area, okay, and my knees hurt, my hips hurt, my back hurts, whatever, okay, well, are you going to suddenly turn around and be, well, I know the science says this works? Or are you going to look at that individual and be like, okay, mate, why is it not working? And let's, what can we try different? So questions for me, I can put together training plans for people and that's basically what I do. Okay, we both online coach, and we both do form check videos and whatever. But actually, what you get out of form check videos isn't what necessarily people think. Now, you can watch a form check video and you can critique, right? You can be like, okay, yeah, maybe you need to try this next time. Maybe you need to change where your feet are. Maybe you need to change the setup a little bit. Maybe the bench needs to go a little bit lower, whatever. But the best question for me in terms of, did that exercise feel right this week? Because at the end of every week, I do monitoring forms of a review of the week as well. Okay. Are simple questions like, did you feel a pump? Okay. Did you feel a pump in the area that you intended that pump to feel in? For example, if you were doing a hip thrust, did you feel a pump in your glutes or did you feel a pump in your quads? So, although, yes, there's a science involved to things, a simple question, and some people might find it ridiculous, did you get a pump? Okay. Getting a pump in an area where you're trying to focus, trying to target, is a big indicator whether that exercise is a good exercise for that person to feel it in that area. Same with, we go back to back squats. Did you feel it in your quads? Did you get a pump in your quads after four sets of 10? They come back with, oh no, but my lower back felt pumped, and it was sore for days. well, you've probably got a better indicator as to whether that exercise is a good fit for them compared to looking at the form check video that they've sent you. As simple as that sounds, it just gives you a lot more feedback, because it boils back down to, someone asks you, does this look right? Most of the time, I will ask, how did it feel? Or did it feel good? Rather than, 20 coaching points, change this, do this. Because again, there's a lot of people just want reassurance. If they come back to you, and most come back and go, actually, yeah, it felt pretty good. Okay, cool. Stick with it. Try it again next week. Let's see what happens. It's one of the easiest questions you can ask is, how did it feel? As simple as that sounds.
It's funny that you mentioned that as well, because it's almost like the whole people expect their macros to change every week when you're coaching them. It's like, I need to have like a macro change, or I need to have like a new diet, or this, that, and the other. It's almost the same with training videos. Like, I need to have some critique. I need to have some feedback. Like, instead of focusing on that part of it, focus instead on how did you perform in that session, and also realizing, step away from the emotions of it all and understand that your session is impacted by the sessions you did prior, by your sleep, by your nutrition, by everything else. And it's okay to have some sessions where things don't feel normal. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong or you fucked up one session. And then bringing it back to the whole program design thing. When you're setting an exercise up, you are more likely to feel it where you should be feeling it if you take all the points that Gareth already said before, with find the muscle, then work the muscle. Don't do your clamshell blah, blah, blahs before. Find the muscle unloaded, then load the muscle, because then you're going to actually have more of a connection to that muscle. And you might not be able to use the weights that you thought you should be using or could use or want to use, because you're actually activating it the right way. You're not resting for a weekend between your reps. You're learning how to use tension. And there is nothing wrong with scaling back the weight and using pink dumbbells if those pink dumbbells are making you feel like they're Ronnie Coleman dumbbells. Like, there's that tension aspect that can make a lightweight feel like a heavyweight. And I remember Luke, I don't know whether you know Luke Lehman, but something that, from Muscle Nerds, something that distracted me from always chasing load when I was a power lifter is when he said to me, Ruby, load is a tool. There are many tools in the toolbox that get you to the end result. The tool is useless if the rest of the mechanics aren't in place. You need a different tool right now. And I want to bring this back to the band. When, like, for example, a lot of people, because we're talking about squats and all that kind of stuff and barbells being overrated, a lot of people can't get full shoulder, ouch, that's my bad shoulder. And that's what I was just about to talk about. Some people can't get full shoulder flexion where the elbow is like right near I can do it with this arm, but I can't do it with that arm. So something that can really help with that is banded stretching like that, to be able to allow you to effectively use that arm the way that you need to use it in the exercise. And once again, this is where program design comes in. But when people are program designing for themselves, they miss a lot of these important factors, and especially which is going to tie up this whole longevity thing and programming for the long term, is a lot of people miss out like single leg work because it's boring and it hurts and they hate it. People miss out certain muscle groups, like when I was programming for myself for a while, and I missed out a lot of external rotation, and I missed out a lot of training in the lengthen range, which is what led to my shoulder issue. Like, people miss out certain things, even though they know they should be doing it, because it's just not a big bang for your buck. So maybe you can talk about that and why and how we can actually program with the long term in mind, bringing in just how important, and the core isn't your abs, but bringing in how much of your body works together as a functional unit and how we can progress that for the long-term goals.
Yeah, there's a few things we can go into here. So first off, big thing with longevity is exercise order. Okay, so, and this kind of ties into us talking about the big exercises, those meat and potatoes exercises, like we're talking about squats, we're talking about You know, obviously mentioned barbells, and I've mentioned before that, you know, barbells, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of them. They are a great tool for some people, but, you know, I do find that from a physique standpoint, there tends to be a better tool 7 times out of 10 versus a bar, maybe even more than that versus a barbell, in terms of an exercise where they can feel it more in the targeted area, but also there be a lower risk kind of to reward there. So, you know, more of a reward, less of a perceived risk from that exercise, i.e., you know, less wear and tear from an exercise. You talk about your shoulder. So, for example, we were talking about a barbell back squat, right? If I've got a barbell on my back, people think about, you know, how it might affect your knees, how it might be affecting your hips. But what about the load it's placing through your shoulder? It's forcing you into a degree of external rotation. Now, that is actually some volume you're putting through your upper body if you think about it, right? Now, if we look at that in the context of the rest of the programming and the rest of everything we're doing in the week, actually, that's going to, as much as you might not think about it this way, it will affect your upper body recovery. Now, if you're dealing with a shoulder issue, then yeah, we maybe want to think about a barbell back squat, you know, and switching that instead to, you know, an easy switch would be to a safety squat bar where our hands are in front. That might be a better option. It is a better option than most. Even squatting in a Smith machine actually puts your shoulders at a slightly better angle versus with a barbell anyway. So Smith machine squat can also be a good option. Smith machine also allows you to unload more at the bottom if you want to use like a reverse band method, because it's easy to set up in a Smith machine. Hack squats, arguably, I would say most hack squat machines, you know, the Cybex ones are great. The hammer strength ones are great as well. The Panata one's pretty good as well. Tend to be better quadriceps builders than a barbell back squat for a lot of people. So there just always tends to be a better option as far as an exercise goes to, you know, to build the muscle, to stimulate the muscle, but also remain injury free. So, you know, a large thing about longevity is just selecting the right exercise and the ones that give you the biggest bang for your buck, but also the ones that aren't putting us in compromised positions, or after a few weeks of doing it makes us feel a little bit cranky. Second off is order of those exercises. Now, I'm a big fan of placing, you know, we talk about squats. I'm a big fan of placing hamstring curl variations before squats. Big fan. I've written about it in the likes of T Nation and Men's Health and things over the years. I think possibly John Meadows, I might have picked it up from originally. He was a big proponent of it. I think late Charles Poliquin, he was a big proponent of it as well. So, you know, I'm a big fan of placing hamstring curl variations before your squats. Great, because they get the blood down there, they warm up your knees, but also we think about that hamstrings to quadriceps ratio. Our quadriceps tend to be a lot stronger than our hamstrings, or proportionally stronger than what they should be. So prioritizing our hamstrings before we do that makes us feel better as well. You tend to also find you can get in a better position when you do some hamstring curls before you do squats. And that doesn't necessarily mean barbell back squats. It can mean Smith machine, hack squat. It could be a leg press, whatever. You tend to find you get in a better position as well. That might be because you've got a bit more of a hamstrings pump. Your hamstrings might have had a bit more of a heads up before actually performing those squats, because they're not actually active during the squats, but there seems to be something that allows them to feel a little bit better. So, for example, hamstring curl before squat variations, face pulls, okay, cable face pulls. You can do them with dumbbells as well. You can do it with a resistance band if you really wanted to. Performing face pulls before pressing variations. So, for example, you might love a dumbbell shoulder press, but, you know, there's nothing better to improve your shoulder health and resilience than doing, 3 sets of 10 to 15 face pulls, you know, heavy in relative terms, but actually overloading those over time before you do your shoulder presses. So again, it goes back down into the order. Rear delt flies as well. Rear delt, you know, people always talk about the rotator cuff, especially the shoulder external rotators, like the infraspinatus. People talk about strengthening those as far as improving shoulder health goes. But actually, one of the best things a lot of people can do is improve the strength of their rear delts. Because again, we think about our shoulders as a kind of a mashup between different muscles all pulling at different angles in different directions, well, it tends to be our anterior delts that are pretty strong and our medial delts, our middle delts that are pretty strong. But our deep shoulder stabilizers, our rotator cuff, as well as our rear delts, again, pulling in a slightly different direction, that tend to be weak as well around there. So, performing things like face pulls and rear delt fly variations before your shoulder presses could be a better recipe for better shoulders health, better longevity, and less wear and tear over time. So there's just a few examples there, really, and the same thing with the face pulls before bench pressing. Guys, on a Monday, straight on the bench press. I think we get the token. I love the Joe DeFranco, I think, calls them summer Ds. Just shoulder circles, doing summer Ds before we do some bench presses, just some random shoulder circles, and think we're kind of prepped and ready for the bench press. Now, I don't necessarily think you need to spend hours warming up for a bench press, but if you come into the gym and you do some face pulls as your first exercise, and then bench presses as your second or even third exercise, then your bench press is going to feel a lot better. It's going to feel a lot smoother. Your shoulders are going to feel better. Your elbows are going to feel better, and you're going to get better longevity. My goal is to be the 70-year-old that's still in the gym and still outlifting the 18-year-olds. It's not just about the short-term gains.
I used to do the DeFranco pull aparts, the ones where you stand on the band and do that when I used to do bench, and I found that really helped activate my lats, which if we had more time, I'd get you to talk about just how freaking important the lats are, because I have this massive spiel on how your lats are part of your core. Like, they're everything. They help you brace. Your lats might be the meat and chunk of what's at the upper body, like right near your armpits, but it actually spans your whole damn back, and that makes it part of your core because it's attaching your glutes to your upper body. And if you're not engaging your lats, then you're going to lose tightness in that area. It's like the back core to the front core, which is not your abs. So your
core is the foundation of everything. It's called your core for a reason, right? It's in the middle of your body, and your core is, technically speaking, it's every single muscle that affects your lumbar, pelvic, and hip complex. Okay. Now we imagine the amount of muscles that are attached and influence the way our lumbar, pelvic, and hips move. There's a ridiculous list of muscles, and there are lists of muscles out there. And to be honest, I think that the list only stopped when the guy writing the list got bored of the amount of muscles that he was listing. But technically, your glutes are part of your core, right? Your hip flexors are part of your core. Your lats are part of your core because they're attached down onto your pelvis. They're attached down on the thoracolumbar fascia and below that as well as obviously being up into your humerus. Your lats are part of that. You think about how important your lats are in deadlifting, Romanian deadlifts and things like that. That's why if we're thinking about bending that bar in like an inverted U shape and engaging our lats, our back feels a lot better because, yes, it's keeping the bar close, but engaging our lats helps contract our entire core and create that, part of that corset effect. And obviously we've got our transverse abs and our superficial abs, our rectus abdominis and our external obliques that we can see. But your abs and your core are more than just your the superficial muscles that people talk about. If we're talking about abdominals, we're talking about abdominals. If we're talking about core, we're talking about a big package of muscles that affect so many things. And just off the back end of that, talking about exercise selection, if people try doing some, actually I had it during the week. Someone questioned me. It was an online coaching client. I had some straight arm lat pull downs, okay, as the first exercise, programmed before some Romanian deadlifts. And they were asking, should this exercise be in this workout? Okay. And I basically was just explaining to them that it was an awareness exercise to help engage their lats by doing the straight arm pull downs before doing the Romanian deadlifts. Which equally, if you're in a squat rack, if you're doing your Romanian deadlifts in a squat rack, you can do some resistance band straight arm pull downs. In the squat rack, do some resistance band straight arm pull downs, and you can like superset those in your warm up sets as you're doing those RDLs. But again, it's like an awareness exercise. It's teaching you to engage your lats, getting them into a good position, which obviously affects the way that this lady was doing her Romanian deadlifts. And there's loads of other things like that, and good examples of just switching the orders. And that's why people have tended to say in the past, that the whole fitness maverick thing, that's not me, that's other people calling me that, and it just stuck, and I just kind of went with it and used it for branding purposes. But a large part of that just comes from the not doing things in a conventional way as far as exercise order goes. Not not kind of thinking about what the mainstream's doing. And you do your squats first and your bench presses first and your deadlifts first in your workout, whatever. Well, no, I'd rather have them second, third in the middle of your workout and actually restructure that workout so you get better longevity from it. And you feel those muscles also working when you are going to be using those key indicator exercises, those meat and potatoes exercises when you're using them, versus using them first and using them as an ego lift and to lift more weight.
I'm clipping that part because I feel that would be really important even for my clients to realize you and I are exactly the same. And that's what I learned from my mentors. I do a lot of backloaded structural balance. I do a lot of middle loaded because I feel like doing like a superset of some other exercises before, like the squats or the deadlift or the hex bar, whatever, it allows them to better perform that movement. And this is where it all comes down to programming for the long-term physique change, because you don't just lift weight for the sake of getting the most weight on the bar or building the most muscle. You want to do so while being able to move better, to feel better, to not have to have a whole friggin' month off because you just caused an injury or because you haven't yet learnt how to engage your core or your lats in a certain exercise, or you have movement issues that prevent you from actually performing it properly. So now other things are getting loaded. So every time you chase more load on the bar, you're just creating more of a mayhem. It's like there is so much to the way that programs are designed for the person that, they may not be massive change, like massive things that make the programs that much different, but they are still unique to you and what your body is capable of doing. And I guess to sum this up with the whole long term in mind, what are some things that you've changed your stance on, and why is it so important to realize that it's not all just about loading the bar, it's not all just about chasing ego, but this comes down to longevity, and in chasing that, they'll look sexy naked on the beach. Someone said to me one day, it's summer every single day in the bedroom. And that kind of stuck with me because it's like, yeah, people want to feel confident in the bedroom. They want to feel sexy in their skin. They want to be able to not have some, I should say a positive side, not to not have. They want to be able to have like their sex drive there. They want to feel sexy in their skin. But that doesn't happen when you're always tying your worth to a number, or you're sore, or you're friggin' like injured or whatever else as well. So yeah, what are some things you've changed your mind on, and why is this all so important for physique in mind? And we're not just talking about longevity here, because it is about the physique and it all ties together.
Yeah, so compare Coach Gareth now to, say, 18-year-old gym bro Gareth. Okay, obviously the big one is the exercise order and the exercise selection. For myself, I'm someone that I played rugby to a good level. I picked up injuries during the day, but when I was training more from a performance perspective and coming up through that route, a lot of egos involved, etc. I was the person that was heavy barbell deadlifting off the floor, heavy barbell bench pressing, heavy barbell back squatting, weighted chin-ups, and things like that. But at the same time, my back was always messed up. My shoulders were always messed up. My elbows were always cranky. And that was outside of the actual rugby and performance training. On top of that, which obviously, it's not a contact sport, it's a collision sport. Where it's car crashes, it's controlled car crashes, right? So just management of those of things like that, really, just in smart exercise selection and management of loading and just picking better exercises for myself. And obviously that's helped with clients and so on. But mostly coaching clients and coaching real people is ultimately what's kind of shaped what I see works and what I see doesn't work. But we go back to myself. So yeah, exercise selection being a massive one. I got to the point where I think I was probably 92 kilos at the point, and barbell bench pressing 175 kilos. Okay, that's a good weight relative to the weight that I was weighing at the time. And big ego, loved it, bench pressing a lot. I think there was a guy in the gym that probably himself weighed about 130 kilos that was pressing similar and was a nationally qualified powerlifter, and I'm kind of keeping up with him. So I was strong at a point. I think I was deadlifting to 40 kilos off the floor at about age 19. I was strong, but even nowadays, I'm seeing some of the effects from that stuff 20 odd years ago. 20 years, I'm 35, a lot longer than that. So again, it's just learning those things and learning learning better exercise selection and picking the right exercises. But the one thing I did want to go on to, which is kind of I suppose kind of from nowhere really, is actually the cardio side of things. Now, I kind of came up with the route of the whole, gym bro, cardio kills your gains, okay? Or only cardio during fat loss phases of training. Now, these days, for myself, and I am for my clients as well, but as I say, I'm just talking about myself here. I'm actually a big fan of just some level of cardiovascular training year round, right? Just from a longevity perspective, health perspective, whatever. And that doesn't necessarily mean to say like hours running on the treadmill. I'm actually not a big fan of running. I don't run. And that's another conversation in itself. I'm not a big fan of programming running. I just think it's added extra stress, impact forces on the body. It affects recovery too much. It conflicts with the resistance training too much. I'm not a big fan of it in general. I'd rather program a brisk incline walk, maybe the Stairmaster. Cycling's always excellent. Low impact stuff that doesn't eat into your recovery so much. But for me personally, even now, I'm not in a fat loss phase of training. I'm in more of a, I suppose I'm in a maintenance phase right now. I'm not after any specific goals. Lack of sleep at the moment, baby that's waking all the time and things like that. I'm just trying to kind of get through things and maintain a physique. But even now, I do 20 minutes, 5 days a week on the Stairmaster, like on a level 9. It's nothing too intense. I'm hitting kind of zone 2 with my heart rate, so it's nothing too intense. But that's something, cardiovascular work is something I will keep in year round and encourage a lot of clients to keep in year round, because it kind of sets that cardiovascular foundation and also helps, yes, it helps with the longevity and the heart health and cardiovascular health and all that kind of stuff as well. But also it improves your work capacity when it comes to your resistance training, right? You're not blowing as hard when you get to the end of your set of 10, 12 reps on leg presses, because you've got a good cardiovascular base to things, because you've kept it in year round, right? So again, that's one thing I've definitely changed my stance on. Probably in the last 5 years, that's something I've implemented more. And just from a longevity perspective, from a health perspective, feeling good, that's been a big one.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I completely agree with that. I because I do the same thing. I can tell when my cardiovascular health is down, because my heart rate gets too high way too soon, and I can't tolerate pushing through that. So my performance suffers. So keeping in a good aerobic base is essential. It's essential for physique goals, for being able to train hard and recover harder. So I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm really excited to get some clips from it as well. And
Good.
Is there anywhere else you want to point people? You can find Gareth at the Fitness Maverick on Instagram and elite_physique_training. I'm going to put that into the links below. But something you'll also find is if you just type him into Google, he'll pop up all over T Nation as well, because he writes so many things and he's written so many really good articles as well. And yeah, is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to plug? Anything else you want to?
Not really. No, not really at all. No, as you say, just Google Google me. My website will come up, thefitnessmaverick.com. I kind of put a lot of the stuff there as well for articles and things like that. But yeah, there's plenty of T Nation articles out there. There's men's health articles. There's elite FTS and all things like that. Generation Iron articles, various things I've written throughout the years. My book will come up as well. But Google's always the place.
I will also have to say, if you're my client listening to this, you will already know his face if you're watching this, and you'll already know his name if you see his name, because he's kind of the person I link with a lot of the videos on my True Coach program. So the way that he breaks everything down, it's like exercise execution is really important. So with that, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions for either of us, message us. If you want to get a little bit more in the know of how to set things up, how to execute things, little sneaky cues, I really highly encourage you to go and find the Fitness Maverick on Instagram and see the videos he puts up. He gives a lot of really good cues. He uses unconventional ways of cueing things as well, which is exactly what can help specific people who have certain things that they find as their weaknesses. So with that, thank you for listening, and don't forget to share this to a friend. Thank you.